Okay, live?
Good evening. Tonight we'll be talking about building a positive school environment. And with me this evening is Catherine Telezon and Christine Simonson. Christine is a principal and Catherine is a teacher. She's been teaching for 10 years and Christine has been the principal for the last 4. So good evening. How are you two tonight?
Good. Thank you for asking.
Great, Stephen. Thanks.
Good. Excellent. What do you view, let's start off with this positive school environment. What do you view as essential building a positive school environment?
Well, as a teacher, I believe that one of the strongest elements of building a strong school environment is to get all stakeholders involved in the same vision and the same implementation system and, I guess, organization. I guess I want to say organization of the system, making sure that everyone knows the goals and the visions of what is a safe school environment and what are the expectations of the students, as far as even from students to teachers to parents to principals, VPs, counselors, making sure we're all on board with that same vision is very important.
Yeah, and as a principal, I would say very similar things, actually. I definitely would also add that the stakeholders all need to be involved in the process of building the school environment. If everyone's not involved, then they're not going to feel like they are committed to it as well as you are. So I think you definitely need to get everyone's opinion. You need to talk to the teachers, the students, the other staff, the office staff. Pretty much everyone needs to be involved in how you're going to kind of build that environment up. And you need to have kind of a common goal that you're all working towards so that everyone has a focus of what it is that they need to do to kind of keep their part working smoothly for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you were rolling this out, was it difficult? Was there some resistance? And what happens if you have a few people that just don't have a buy-in and can't be bothered by it? How do you get everybody on the bus here?
Well, yeah, there was definitely some resistance. I think any time you plan something whole school, there's some resistance because there might be a breakdown in communication. So our school was fortunate in the sense that where there was resistance, our principal Christine, had an implementation plan and was very communicative, visually, through letter writing, through also having the APs and the teachers get together to roll this out to the community. And there was a step-by-step plan with making sure our teachers knew what was going on first, and then making sure the parents knew what was going on, and then allowing time to edit that positive school behavior plan, and also talking about or discussing with one another why this implementation plan was so important. Why is it important to not just change students' behaviors, but changing them to be more thoughtful of their behaviors and explaining the background of that. So yeah, there was resistance, but through communication, I think we went through. How about you?
So, Christine, when you felt that everybody was invested in the program, describe that feeling.
The feeling of everyone being invested?
Yes. When you knew, okay, I don't have to just tell people what we're going to do and the type of culture we're going to develop. It was like when the teachers really came together and said, hey, you know what, we're invested here, we're going to do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really awesome to have everyone on board working towards a common goal and, wanting to be part of that school community because they feel like they have put time into it, they feel like they have formed these relationships with people, and they feel like what they're doing matters and that they're actually able to help students in the best way possible because they're all on the same page. And I think that just definitely helps. It helps the students, it helps the teachers, everyone just feels better coming to work and coming to school, and you feel like you're part of an actual community. It's almost like a family that you create.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us about the biggest challenge you had as far as implementing procedures and just certain protocols that you were going to implement at the school? What was tough?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, what was great is that we had Dan St. Romain, who is a consultant to help, I guess, change the way that teachers deal with students with behavioral problems. And we look to him to help us understand how students and people, their brain works to just not just attack the behavior and make them change it, but basically how can we help them channel the behavior of students in a different way. And as far as teacher goes, or teachers, what we helping us understand the brain and understanding that we are channeling students' behaviors and changing the way that we looked at discipline, just that mindset changed our campus and our climate and also our culture as well.
So let's just say there's a teacher, and there's a new program where everybody goes through the procedures called Wine Basic, where there's an orderly way of transitioning through the school. What happens if there's a teacher who says, well, you know what, my class has always just kind of met me at the door. Get there safely. I can't be concerned about kids are in an orderly line. I just need to start class. Get in the classroom, sit down, let's go. Were there any teachers? I mean, what would happen if the teacher, what, I've been doing it for 15 years, why should I change?
So I think in regards to that, it's difficult sometimes, especially with a staff member who has maybe kind of set in their ways and they're used to doing things a certain way, and you come in and you want to change things a little bit. I think the only way to really bring that person in is to get everyone else on board and for them to kind of see like, oh, you know what, they're doing all these great things, these programs are working, the kids are responding better, we're seeing all these really awesome results, and then they feel like, oh, maybe I should look into that program. So it's almost like you have to encourage them. Like a student that doesn't want to participate, you have to somehow bring them in by getting them to want to be involved in what you're doing in some way. So I feel like the best way to do that for teachers is to get other teachers on board to kind of sell the program to those teachers that are maybe resistant, because they're the ones who are going to convince them in the end.
Okay, makes sense. Excellent. Okay, let's talk about sustaining this matrix. What do you do? Okay, we've done the hard yards. We've come up with the school matrix. We've come up with a positive school environment plan. Then what happens? You're going to have maybe a little turnover every year. How do you sustain this system? What is the key to just keeping it going and making sure that it's embedded in the school culture? It's built to last.
What I found that helped out was revisiting the vision and the goals of the school as a team. So making sure that teachers were on board, and we talked about it quite frequently actually in meetings and also in our PLCs, and keeping it at the forefront of our, of our conversation. That really helped get it going. I also felt that we were not even just changing student behavior, but part of this was implementing expectations for our teachers and also our admin that this is not going away. We are going to support one another. We're going to have these procedures such as lining up at the door or making sure that students are not roaming the campus at any time, only to use the bathroom. There was purpose for our classrooms. And making sure even our school security guards were on top of that as well, and APs, everyone. So those expectations, those goal settings, keeping that at the forefront, making sure that everybody, every stakeholder was a part of that decision and also believed in that decision, helped sustain it. And once I found the teachers and the admin and the counselors and every stakeholder supported one another, it was very easy to get students on board because they knew they were there with a purpose. They knew they were here for learning, not just for acting out or yelling or whatnot. Everything had structure, and the adults were together, and that's what really helped sustain it and grow the program.
And I think
when children come to school, they feel they have a sense of purpose. Job well done. Christine, did you see through this new plan, were teachers, how are they talking to their students? Is there a change in the tone and the way that they approached difficult situations?
I'm sorry, could you restate that question? I didn't hear it clearly.
Yes, the question was, did you notice a change in the way that teachers were speaking and addressing their students, and the way that they were, just their overall approach to handling difficult situations?
Definitely. I mean, the teachers, once you have, like, you're all on the same page and you have a plan, then they kind of see, like, there's certain behaviors that students exhibit that are difficult to handle. And so once you have a way to deal with that and you've explained to the staff, you know, these are some things you can do with students that are acting this way. You know, like for the example of, you know, not feeding into that, not arguing with them, not trying to engage them when they're upset. You know, all those kinds of things really helped with the way that they handle difficult situations, and also the way that they try to greet the students at the door when they come in, try to say something to them, say something of interest, you know, take an interest in their lives, ask them how their weekend was. All those little things can kind of basically stop some of those major issues because the kids feel like you have that relationship. And once you form that relationship with the students, you know, you're going to have a much better day in your classroom. And also the same thing with, as a principal, you have to also form that relationship with your teachers and make sure that they all feel comfortable talking to you and that you show an interest in their lives and you don't just write them off as just another employee the same way that you wouldn't do that with your students. So yeah, I definitely see a change.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too, because it wasn't just a plan and our principal said, here, you're going to have to implement this. It was, it took a little while in the beginning to implement this plan, to talk about the vision and the goal, but it wasn't just Christine telling us, you need to do this. She made sure, and the principal made sure, and the APs made sure that they monitored the plan and they edited the plan and they got all stakeholders involved, and they also used their leadership to also say, wait, that's not student-centered. We need to keep our conversations around student safety and the environment to make sure students can learn. So there were boundaries to those rules, and monitoring those rules, I thought, not even just with the students, but with the teachers, helped it grow and helped sustain the program.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like your school fits right into the PBIS model, Positive Behavioral Intervention Support Program, that really hot topic now. Can you talk to us a little bit about the transition, and when you heard about PBIS being implemented in your district, was it, oh, we got this, we're already doing it?
Yeah, doing or implementing the PBIS system allowed, it's closely related to response to intervention, RTI, and it helped us just really look at the problems that were happening at school. So we assessed the problems that were happening at schools. We looked at, and like I said, it was all stakeholders. So using PBIS helped us not only to look at just what are the APs doing, the principals are doing, and what are the teachers doing, but we looked at the environment of the school, we looked at the setting of the school, we looked at the classroom settings, we looked at all these things, instructional deliveries. I mean, no stone was unturned as far as to see how could we help build a positive school environment. And in that sense, PBIS kind of allowed us to have a model to attack, I guess, school safety, and making sure that, again, having all stakeholders be accountable to this system really helped grow, I guess, the idea that, wow, we can be positive and our students can be positive, and that mentality at our school. And in a sense, it's I feel safer. I mean, not that it wasn't bad before, but it just feels like, Christine said before, a family. The kids feel like it's a place to learn and it's a place to grow, and they feel safe there.
Well, you know, that's very compelling. And I've heard that now with PBIS, we can no longer suspend students that should be suspended for certain offenses. What's your word on that? And what would you say to, how would you address that? Can teachers suspend? Can students be suspended PBIS?
Yeah, I mean, students can still be suspended from their teachers for that day and the rest of the next day. However, things could potentially be changing. I know that it's kind of in the works. People would like to get rid of that option. At this point, they can still use it, but overall, we don't encourage suspension, and it's definitely, obviously, not a first choice because then the student is not learning, and part of the reason that they got kicked out was probably because they're already behind. And so, obviously, it's not something that teachers and principals would like to encourage at any school. So I think suspension should always be a last resort, and if you have your steps in place as far as a relationship that you've formed with that student, the behavior tends to decrease. In addition to that, if you have things set up where the teacher has other options, maybe they just need a break from that student for 30 minutes. You know, maybe they each just need a break from each other. So if you have options set up where they can partner with another teacher, send them out for a little bit of time, have them come back, or possibly even, you know, have a little chat with someone in the office. Maybe they just need to talk to a counselor. Maybe the kid's having a bad day. And then maybe that situation will be resolved without having to take that sort of a step. I mean, obviously, in the best interest of the kid, we want them to be in class as much as possible, but if they are interfering with the learning of everyone else, something does need to be done about that as well. So I think that's, as long as you have good things in place as far as what teachers need to do to address that issue without it becoming a major issue, you can kind of avoid the suspension for the most part. I mean, sometimes it's inevitable, but I think overall it's pretty unnecessary usually.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. One more question. I just wanted to, let's talk about what's the best example of a prevention or strategy that works best with dealing with a difficult child. Catherine, could you address that question, please?
Yeah, no problem. I found, just from the research, I mean, one of the goals of PBIS and many behavioral support, I guess, teachers and providers believe that you don't just change the behavior. You don't just address the behavior and push students away and say, oh, you did something wrong, but you want to divert the behavior and you want to make sure that you channel the behavior in something else. So I found something very simple. I mean, so simple that changed my classroom was the students that came in that were so jumpy and they couldn't sit down in their seats. I had them right away have tasks. They had to pass out work. They had to walk around and greet everybody and say hi. And I showed them how to do it. I showed them how to organize things. And now that simple task of, instead of saying, sit down, be quiet, do this, they're helping me out. And they're channeling that exciting energy into a positive, I guess, into positive talk and positive behaviors. And that was one of the things that I saw with my students who are overly excited.
I think that's great, Catherine. And I've noticed that, for example, when I had a really difficult student once, I put him in charge of answering the door and the phone and like all these little tasks, and that really just kept them like, they would be in the middle of arguing with me about something, and as soon as the phone would ring, they would jump up because that was like their job, and they couldn't, you know, do bad on their job. So it's really interesting how those little things will just like change the entire environment of your classroom.
And it also, I saw, built trust too. And when you can trust the most active kid who is usually being chewed out by another teacher, I mean, come on, be honest. I mean, we all know who that bad kid is. When you see that teachers trust that quote-unquote bad kid, and that kid sees that, a student sees you trusting them, I mean, it changes the whole classroom environment as well. You know, just even the thought of what St. Romain said about not being reactionary, talking to other teachers instead of at lunch complaining, we decided to say, okay, let's share a problem that happened in the classroom. How can we, you know, deal with that later? So, or differently, and even just changing the speech that came out of, I guess, lunchtime talks, even with students, and not, again, just scolding right away, but asking them, how could you have done that differently? Do you understand why I'm upset? Making them think about their problems and thinking about solutions to their problems really changed my classroom. I found that I mean, Christine, you don't see my kids anymore because
it's
making them think.
Yes, because Christine, you've got it good. And look at this, with this new program, there must be fewer people entering the office than, you know, I was talking to Catherine off the air, and she was saying that, you know, she's been she tries to bring one of her students in once a week into the office to talk to you about how great they're doing at school.
That's
great. It's great to hear the positives instead of the negatives because, you know, as a principal, you mostly deal with the negatives. So it's really nice to have kids come in and say, look what I did this week, and I'm loving that I'm going to school and we're working on this project. You know, that's really awesome. So.
It's been wonderful speaking with the two of you. It's been inspiring work, and keep it up. All the best. Good evening, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.